Dawn broke over the Arizona territory, painting the mesquite trees in gold. She-He, the Apache scout known as Silent Sentinel, froze at the sight before him. A young white woman, belly swollen with child, hung suspended from a twisted branch. Her wrists bled where the ropes cut deep. Below her feet, a crude wooden sign. Apache man don't forgive. She-He's weathered hand moved to his knife. Tribal law was clear the white man's quarrels were not Apache business. Yet something deeper than law stirred within him as the girl's eyes fluttered open, meeting his with neither fear nor hatred, but a wordless plea that transcended their divided worlds. What mysterious force had bound their fates together in this desolate place? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special. For you. Shi's hand trembled slightly as he clutched the eagle feather, talisman hanging from his neck, a gift from his grandfather when he had completed the rites of manhood. The old man's voice whispered across the years, "This will guide you when the path is unclear." Never had the path seemed more uncertain than now. The woman's breaths came shallow and quick. Her skin, naturally pale by Apache standards, had taken on an alarming gray cast. The ropes that suspended her had left angry welts where they bit into her flesh. Dried blood caked the corners of her mouth. "Apache man don't forgive," the sign proclaimed. But this was no Apache doing that. She had spent years tracking for the cavalry, reading signs others missed. The boot prints circling the tree were wrong too. Deep at the heel, worn unevenly at the outer edge. Not cavalry, not settlers protecting their homesteads. These were the marks of men who lived hard lives beyond the law. He cut through the ropes with a single slash of his knife. The woman collapsed against him, surprisingly heavy with her swollen belly. His arms instinctively cradled her, mindful of the child she carried. "What is your name?" he asked in the halting English he had learned during his time as a scout. Her cracked lips parted. "Emma," she whispered, before her head lolled against his shoulder. She closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his decision pressing upon him like the midday sun. To abandon her would be to sentence two souls to death. To help her meant defying the wisdom of his people. Do not interfere in the white man's affairs, for it always brings suffering. The eagle feather seemed to grow warm against his chest. His grandfather had also taught him that all life was sacred, that honor came not from following rules blindly, but from listening to the spirits. When they spoke to your heart, distant memories of his training as a scout flooded back. Chief Chadimas. Stern warning. You watch, you listen, you report. You do not engage. The white men's wars were not Apache wars. Their justice was not Apache justice. Yet here was no war, no justice, only cruelty. He gathered the unconscious woman into his arms, adjusting her weight to protect her belly. The nearest settlement was 2 days' ride, and she would not survive the journey without water and care. His hidden canyon was half a day's journey, difficult terrain. But there he had shelter, medicine, and the sacred spring ghats. He studied the surrounding landscape, committing every detail to memory. The strange boot prints leading northwest. 3 men, one with a pronounced limp. A discarded whiskey bottle, the label from a distillery in Texas. A broken cigar stub, expensive, the kind officers and rich ranchers smoked. Whoever had done this had wanted her to be found by Apache, to kindle more hatred between their peoples. He would remember these signs. There would be time for justice later, if the spirits willed it. For now, life hung in the balance. The sun climbed. Higher as She moved through the scrubland, the woman cradled against his chest. The weight of her and the unborn child made his progress slow, deliberate. He chose his path carefully, avoiding open ground where they might be spotted, using dry creek beds and rocky outcroppings for cover. Emma stirred occasionally, murmuring incoherent words. Once her eyes opened briefly, clouded with pain and confusion, before closing again. Her breathing remained shallow, but steady. The child within her kicked once, a small but determined motion against Sheehy's supporting arm. 2 lives entrusted to him by forces he could not name. By midday, the heat had become oppressive. Sheehy paused in the shade of a large boulder, gently lowering Emma to the ground. He moistened a cloth from his waterskin and pressed it to her lips, then her forehead. She was burning with fever. "Hold on," he whispered, though he wasn't sure she could hear. "The canyon is near." As he gathered her up once more, a memory surfaced: his sister Najoni in childbed, struggling to bring forth new life, her face contorted with the same gray exhaustion that now marked Emma's features. Najoni had survived by the grace of the spirits and the skill of the tribal healer. Her son had not. Sheehy pushed the memory away. This would be different. It had to be. The hidden canyon had been his sanctuary since boyhood, when he had discovered it while tracking a wounded deer. Neither his tribe nor the white settlers ventured there, the Apache believing it to be a place where spirits dwelled, the settlers unaware of its existence, beyond the forbidding rock formations that concealed its entrance. As the shadows lengthened, Sheehy approached the narrow crevice that served as the canyon's hidden doorway. He turned sideways to navigate the passage, careful not to jostle Emma. The air cooled as they moved deeper into the stone corridor, the sound of falling water growing louder with each step. Then the passage widened, opening onto a vista that never failed to steal Sheehy's breath, a small valley of surprising lushness, fed by a spring that emerged from the canyon wall and cooled in a clear basin before continuing as a stream through the canyon floor. Cottonwoods and willows grew along the water's edge. Medicinal herbs that Sheehy had planted over the years thrived in the protected environment. Here, where the unseen boundaries of 2 worlds blurred, perhaps both Emma and her child would find a chance at life. The sacred spring burbled from a crack in the canyon wall, its waters catching the late afternoon light and fracturing it into 1,000 golden ripples. Sheehy had first found this place as a boy of 12 summers, following a wounded deer whose trail had led him through the narrow passage. When he emerged into this hidden paradise, he had stood transfixed, certain he had wandered into the realm of spirits. Years later, it remained his secret refuge, a place between worlds where he could be neither scout nor warrior, but simply himself. Now, as he gently laid Emma on a bed of soft grasses near the spring, he whispered a prayer of thanks to the spirits of the canyon. This place had sheltered him through many seasons of doubt and healing. Perhaps it would work its magic. For her as well, the woman's breathing had grown more labored during their journey. Her skin burned with fever, her lips cracked from dehydration. The child within her stirred restlessly, as if sensing its mother's distress. Sheehy cupped his hands and filled them with water from the spring. The liquid was cool and clear, with the faint mineral taste that marked it as special. He had seen this water heal wounds that should have festered, give strength to the weak. The old one said it was blessed by the Earth Mother herself. He lifted Emma's head, bringing the water to her parched lips. "Drink," he urged softly. "The water will help." At first, the liquid simply trickled down her chin. Then, instinctively, she swallowed. Her eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. Sheehy worked methodically as the sun descended behind the canyon walls, casting long shadows across their sanctuary. He cleansed Emma's wounds with spring water, applied poultices of crushed herbs to the rope burns on her wrists and ankles. He built a small fire, brewing a tea of willow bark and desert sage to bring down her fever. As darkness fell, Emma stirred, mumbling words he couldn't understand. Her hands clutched protectively at her swollen belly. "You are safe," Sheehy told her, though he wasn't sure she could hear. "Both of you." He remembered the first time he had brought his sister Najoni to this place. after soldiers had killed her husband in a raid gone wrong. How she had sat beside the spring for days, speaking to no one, her grief a palpable thing. The canyon had worked its healing on her spirit, just as the spring had healed the wound in her arm from a soldier's bullet. This canyon existed outside the wars of men. Here there were no sides to take, no vengeance to be sought, only the ancient rhythm of water over stone, wind through leaves. Sheehy watched as Emma's restless movements gradually stilled, her breathing becoming deeper and more regular. The tea was working. He added more wood to the fire and settled himself against a boulder where he could keep watch through the night. Sleep would not come easily with a stranger in his sanctuary, but he would rest when he could. In the flickering firelight, he studied the white woman's face. She was young, perhaps 20 summers, with hair the color of sunlit wheat. Even drawn with pain and exhaustion, her features held a quiet strength. Who was she? What had she done to deserve such cruelty? And why had the spirits led him to her at that precise moment? The stars wheeled overhead, visible in the narrow strip of sky between the canyon walls. He found the star that does not move, the one the white men called the North Star. His grandfather had taught him that it was the doorway through which brave warriors passed to the afterlife. Tonight, it seemed to shine with particular brilliance, as if the ancestors were watching his actions with interest. Dawn was breaking when Emma finally opened her eyes. He had dozed off, despite his best intentions, and was awakened by the sound of her sharp intake of breath. He remained motionless, not wanting to frighten her. She pushed herself up on one elbow, wincing with pain, and stared around the canyon in bewilderment. Her gaze fell on the spring, then the small fire, and finally came to rest on She-He. For a long moment, they regarded each other in silence. She-Ho saw fear flash across her face, followed by confusion, and then surprisingly a flicker of recognition. "You cut me down," she said, her voice a raspy whisper. From the tree, She-He nodded once. "You needed help." Her hand moved to her belly. "My baby?" "The child lives," he assured her. "I have given you medicine for fever, water from the sacred spring." She looked at the pool of water, then back at him. The wariness in her eyes had not entirely disappeared, but it was tempered now with something else. Cautious gratitude, perhaps. "Where are we?" she asked. "A hidden place." "Safe place?" He hesitated, then added, "My place." Emma attempted to sit up further, but gasped with pain and fell back. "Rest," he said, moving forward to adjust the folded blanket that served as her pillow. "Your body needs healing." She didn't flinch from his touch, a small victory. After a moment, she asked, "Why did you help me?" "The sign said—" "I know what the sign said," he interrupted. Sign was not written by Apache. A shadow crossed her face. No, it wasn't. She fell silent then, exhaustion claiming her once more. But the brief exchange had revealed something important. She knew who had hung her from that tree. And she knew it wasn't his people. Outside the canyon, the world of men continued its cycles of violence and retribution. In here, for now at least, there was only the sound of the sacred spring, offering its gentle healing to all who needed it. Shi reached for the medicine pouch that hung at his belt, small deerskin bag containing herbs gathered through years of careful observation. Each plant had shown him its purpose in its own time, the yellow flowers that drew down fever, the bitter root that cleansed wounds, the rare gray-green leaves that eased pain without clouding the mind. These were not the ways of the tribal medicine man with his elaborate ceremonies and spirit songs. Shi-Hi's knowledge came from listening to the land itself, from watching which plants the injured deer sought out, which leaves the old wolf chewed when his leg pained him. He selected several dried leaves, crushing them between his fingers before, adding them to a wooden cup of spring water. The aroma that rose was sharp and clean, like the air after lightning has struck the desert. "You must drink this," he told Emma, who had awakened again as the sun climbed high enough to touch the canyon floor. It will help with pain. She regarded the cup with understandable suspicion. What is it? Medicine. From plants that grow in secret places. He hesitated, then added, I would not harm you or your child. Her eyes searched his face, looking for something truth, perhaps, or deception. Whatever she saw seemed to satisfy her, for she took the cup with trembling hands and sipped cautiously. It's not as bitter as I expected, she said, surprise evident in her voice. He nodded. The bitterness is in other medicines. This one is for comfort. As Emma drank, he unwrapped the makeshift bandages he had applied to her wrists. The night before, the angry red welts had begun to heal, but would leave scars, a permanent reminder of her ordeal. He recognized the pattern of the wounds. These weren't from simple binding. The ropes had been deliberately tightened and loosened repeatedly, a method of torture he had seen used on Apache captives by men who enjoyed causing pain. These marks, he said quietly, I have seen before. On my people, when they are taken prisoner. Emma looked away. They wanted information. What information could a woman with child have that was worth this? She was silent for so long that he thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. They wanted to know where my husband had hidden the gold. He applied fresh herb poultices to her wrists, giving her time to continue if she wished. After several moments, she did. There was no gold. Thomas, my husband, was a schoolteacher before we came west. We came to start a new life, to build a home where our child could grow up free from the shadows of war. A bitter smile touched her lips. We thought there would be peace here. There is no peace where men hunger for what is not theirs, he said, remembering the land his people had lost, acre by acre, to those who coveted it. No, Emma agreed softly. There isn't. She winced suddenly, her hand going to her belly. Baby? Yes. He's been restless since they took me. Fear clouded her eyes. It's too early. He shouldn't come for another moon cycle. He nodded, understanding her concern. We will pray the child waits. And if he doesn't? He met her gaze steadily. Then we will face that crossing when we come to it. The herbal tea soon took effect. Emma's tense features relaxed as she drifted into a healing sleep. He used the opportunity to hunt, bringing down a desert hare with a well-placed stone. As he prepared the meat, his thoughts turned to the complexity of his situation. By tribal law, Emma was not his responsibility. The conflicts of settlers were their own affair. Yet something had drawn him to that tree at dawn. Something had stayed his hand when custom dictated non-interference. The eagle feather talisman at his throat seemed to grow warm whenever he questioned his decision, as if his grandfather's spirit approved from beyond the stars. When Emma awoke again, the sun was beginning its descent toward the western rim of the canyon. He had prepared a simple broth from the hare, enriched with wild onions and sage. You should eat, he said, helping her sit up against a smooth boulder. For the child. She accepted the wooden bowl, inhaling the steam rising from it. It smells wonderful. I didn't realize how hungry I was. As she ate, color gradually returned to her cheeks. The spring water and herbal medicines were doing their work. I don't even know your name, she said suddenly. He replied. It means silent sentinel in your tongue. She repeated, the syllables awkward but earnest on her lips. Thank you for saving us. He inclined his head slightly, accepting her gratitude without comment. After a moment, he asked the question that had been troubling him since. He found her. The men who did this, they wanted others to think Apache had taken you? Emma nodded slowly. They put that sign there deliberately. One of them, their leader, said it would serve both purposes. They would get what they wanted, From me, and afterward ... She swallowed hard. Afterward, my body would help start the war they've been trying to provoke. War between our peoples serves no one but those who profit from death, he said. Thomas believed the same. Her voice caught. It got him killed. Night was falling now, the canyon walls glowing briefly copper and gold before fading to purple. Shadow. She built up the fire against the desert chill, adding aromatic pinon branches that filled the air with their sweet resin scent. Across the flames, Emma watched him with eyes that had seen too much hardship for one so young. Yet there was a resilience in her that reminded him of the desert plants that survived drought and bloomed with the briefest rain. "Will your people look for you?" she asked. "Eventually," he acknowledged. "But they will not find this place unless—" "I wish it. And the men who took me?" Sheehy's expression hardened slightly. "If they are wise, they will ride far from here and never return." But in his heart, he knew the story had not yet reached its end. Men who would hang a pregnant woman from a tree to die were not men who would simply disappear into the vastness of the territory. Sooner or later, their paths would cross again. And when that day came, Sheehy would be ready. Dawn arrived with gentle fingers of light reaching down the canyon walls. Emma had slept through the night, her breathing deep and even a good sign. Sheehy had dozed intermittently, always alert for any sound that didn't belong in the canyon's natural symphony. He was placing fresh water to boil over the rekindled fire when Emma stirred. She pushed herself up to sitting with noticeably less difficulty than the day before. "The medicine helped," she said, touching her wrists where the angry red welts had faded to dull pink. "I haven't felt this clear-headed since ... Her voice trailed off. "Since before they took you," Sheehy finished for her. She nodded, absently reaching for something at her neck that wasn't there. A fleeting expression of distress crossed her face. "What is missing?" Sheehy asked. "My locket," Emma said softly. "It had a photograph of Thomas, my husband. It's the only image I had of him." Her eyes grew distant. "They tore it off when they ... bull quotes." She swallowed hard. "When they first took me." Sheehy remembered something he had glimpsed half buried in the dirt beneath the mesquite tree. At the time, his focus had been entirely on saving Emma, but now the memory surfaced, a glint of metal, catching the early morning light. Was it gold? Small like this? He indicated the size with his fingers. Hope flashed across her face. "Yes, with a small etching of a rose on the front. I saw such a thing beneath the tree." "You did?" Her voice caught with emotion. "It must have fallen when they ... double quotes." She couldn't finish the sentence. "When we are stronger, perhaps we can return to find it," Sheehy offered. For the first time since he had found her, Emma smiled, a small, tremulous thing, but genuine. "I would like that very much." Sheehy prepared a simple breakfast of pine nuts, dried berries, and a tea brewed from a native herb that strengthened the blood. As they ate, he found himself curious about this woman whose fate had become so unexpectedly entwined with his own. "Your husband," he began carefully. "You said he was a teacher?" Emma nodded, her expression softening with memory. "Yes, he taught at a small school in Ohio before the war. Afterward, everything was ... different. He couldn't bear to stay." "The war changed many things," Sheehy agreed. He had been a boy when the conflict they called the Civil War began, but he remembered how it had drawn away the bluecoat soldiers who had been pressing at Apache lands, giving his people a brief respite from their encroachment. Thomas believed education was the path to understanding between all peoples, Emma continued. When we came west, he hoped to start a school that would teach both settler children and native children. He said knowledge was the enemy of fear, and fear was the root of hatred. Sheehy considered this. "A wise man, your husband." "He was." Her hands moved protectively over her swollen belly. He was so happy about the baby. Said our child would grow up in a better world than we had. A shadow crossed her face. He waited, sensing there was more to the story. 3 weeks ago, a group of Apache families came to our homestead, she said finally. A woman was in labor. There were complications. They knew Thomas had some medical knowledge from the war. He nodded, beginning to understand. He delivered the baby successfully. The mother lived. Thomas was so proud he could help. Emma's voice grew tight. The next day, Ransom and his men came. They said Thomas was an Indian lover, that he was betraying his own kind. This Ransom, he is the one who later took you? Yes. He leads a band of men who call themselves militia, but they're just thugs with guns. They've been trying to drive the Apache from the fertile valleys, claiming the land for themselves. And your husband interfered with this plan by showing kindness, he concluded. Emma nodded, tears welling in her eyes. They shot him in front of me. Said it was a warning to others, who might forget which side they were on. Her voice broke, as if kindness had sides. She reached again for the absent locket. Afterward, they started the rumor that Thomas had discovered gold on our land. They thought I knew where it was hidden. A bitter laugh escaped her. There was never any gold. Just a man who believed people could learn to live together in peace. He was silent for a long moment. Emma's story echoed others he had heard, good people caught between the greed of men like Ransom and the suspicion bred by generations of conflict. Your husband honored the Apache with his trust, he said finally. Those families will not. Forget. It doesn't bring him back, Emma whispered. No, he agreed, but his spirit lives in the good he did, and in the child you carry. Emma wiped away her tears with the back of her hand. Ransom said if I didn't tell them where the gold was, they single quotes D. She struggled to continue. They said they'd cut the baby out and leave us both for the Apache to find. That it would finally start the war they wanted. Anger flashed through Sheehy, hot and sudden as summer lightning. Such cruelty dishonored all who walked beneath the sky. But he kept his voice steady. They will not touch you or your child again. This I promise. Emma studied his face. Why do you help me, She? Your people and mine have been enemies for generations. My grandfather taught me to judge each soul by its own actions, not by the actions of others who share its skin. He gestured to the canyon around them. This place exists between worlds. Here, there are no tribes, no nations, only what is true. And what is true? Emma asked softly. She met her gaze steadily. That you needed help. That your child deserves life. That your husband died, showing kindness to my people. He paused. These truths are enough. The simplicity of his answer seemed to reach something deep within Emma. Some of the tension she had carried, even in sleep, eased from her shoulders. Thomas would have liked you, she said with a small smile. And I would have respected him. She replied. Men of peace are rare in these lands. As the morning progressed, She showed Emma some of the medicinal plants he had cultivated in the canyon, explaining their properties and uses. She proved to be a quick study, her knowledge of Eastern herbs complementing his understanding of desert plants. This reminds me of my grandmother's garden, she said, carefully crushing a leaf between her fingers and inhaling its scent. She was known for her healing teas. The knowledge of plants is one thing all peoples share, he observed. The earth speaks the same language to those who listen. In this small, hidden canyon, two souls from worlds apart found common ground in the ancient wisdom of growing things. Midday heat shimmered above the canyon walls when She, gathering herbs near the upper rim, spotted the telltale puffs of smoke rising from the distant hills. 3 short bursts, and a long trail the signal that called scouts to return. His people were looking for him. He watched the smoke signals with a mixture of concern and resignation. 3 days had passed since he had failed to return from his morning scouting. The tribal council would want answers. And how could he explain? What he himself did not fully understand his compulsion to save the white woman, to protect her and her unborn child. From below, Emma called his name. Her strength had returned remarkably quickly, testament to her resilience as much as to the healing properties of the spring and his medicines. She stood beside the water, one hand shielding her eyes as she looked up at him. "Is something wrong?" she asked, sensing his tension even from a distance. He descended carefully, picking his way down the rocky slope. "My tribe signals for my return," he said simply. Emma's face fell. "You're leaving." "I must speak with them. Explain my absence." He hesitated. "They will have questions. About me," she said. "It wasn't a question." He nodded. "Relations between our peoples grow more strained with each passing moon. The tribal council meets often now to discuss what can be done. Will you tell them about me? About what Ransom is doing?" He busied himself with arranging his gathered herbs, giving himself time to consider. "Truth is always best," he said finally. "But truth must sometimes be shared carefully, like strong medicine." Emma absorbed this. "You think they wouldn't understand why you helped me?" "Some would understand, others." He sighed. "Others have seen too much suffering at settler hands to believe in exceptions." The last tribal council meeting had been particularly contentious. Young warriors like Keem had argued passionately for preemptive strikes against settler outposts. The wiser heads, including Elder Nahilzi and Sheehy's mentor Nantai, had counseled patience and vigilance. But even they had spoken of drawing boundaries that could not be crossed without response. And here was Sheehy, crossing the most fundamental boundary of all, bringing a white woman into their world, harboring her in a sacred place. "Will you be in danger because of me?" Emma asked. Quietly. The question surprised him. Few settlers ever considered the welfare of an Apache. "I will be questioned," he acknowledged, "but I am respected as a scout. My word carries weight." Emma was silent for a moment. Then, "If it would be better for you, I could try to make my way to the nearest settlement." The offer was sincere, she realized. This woman, still weak from her ordeal, carrying a child, would risk the dangerous journey alone rather than bring trouble upon him. "No," he said firmly, "you are not strong enough, and Ransom's men may still search for you." Relief flickered across her face, quickly replaced by concern. "Then what will you do?" He glanced again at the distant smoke signals, now fading against the azure sky. "I will go to my people. I will speak truth, and I will return." "How long will you be gone?" 2 days, perhaps 3. He began gathering supplies, enough food and medicine to see her through his absence. "The spring will provide water. Stay within the canyon. Few know of this place, but caution is wise." As he prepared, he showed Emma which plants could be eaten, which used for medicine. He demonstrated how to maintain the small fire without creating smoke that might be seen above the canyon walls. He left her his second knife, shorter than his hunting blade, but sharp and well balanced. "If danger comes," he instructed, "there is a hiding place." He pointed to a narrow fissure in the canyon wall, nearly invisible unless one knew exactly where to look. The passage leads to a small chamber. Even in daylight, it remains in shadow. Emma listened intently, committing each detail to memory. When he had finished his preparations, she surprised him by extending her hand in the settler gesture of agreement. "I'll be here when you return," she said with quiet determination. He hesitated only briefly before taking her hand. Her skin was softer than Apache women's, unaccustomed to the hard work of survival, yet there was strength in her grip. "There is one more thing," he said, releasing her hand. Words you should know in the Apache tongue to call for help? He nodded. Shil nal anali. It means help me. And she-he nadanada. She-he, come back quickly. Emma repeated the phrases carefully, stumbling slightly over the unfamiliar sounds. Shil nal anali. She-he nadinida. Good. He approved. The canyon carries sound in strange ways. If you call, I will hear. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, she-he shouldered his small pack and moved toward the canyon entrance. At the narrow passage, he turned back. Emma stood beside the sacred spring, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other raised in farewell. The slanting sunlight caught in her hair, turning it to living gold. For a moment, she seemed to belong to this place as naturally as the ancient stones and flowing water. Be safe, she called softly. And you, he replied, before slipping through the passage and into the wider world beyond. The journey to his tribe's current encampment would take him through the night. As Xiai moved swiftly across the familiar terrain, his thoughts remained divided forward to the difficult explanations that awaited him, backward to the woman he had left alone in his sanctuary. Whatever came of his meeting with the tribal council, one thing was certain. Nothing would be the same after this. Something fundamental had shifted, like the imperceptible movement of earth before a landslide. He had crossed a boundary, and there could be no returning to the world as it was before. Above him, the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of twilight. His grandfather had taught him that the stars were the campfires of those who had gone before, watching over the living with ancient wisdom. Guide my words, she whispered to those distant lights. Help me find the path through what is to come. The council fire cast long shadows across the faces of the tribal elders. She stood before them, his posture respectful but unbowed. He had arrived at the encampment as dawn broke, after traveling through the night. Word of his return had spread quickly, and by midday the council had convened. 12 pairs of eyes studied him with expressions ranging from concern to suspicion. At the center sat Elder Nahilzi, his weathered face as impassive as the ancient stones of the sacred mountains. Beside him was Nantai, Shehe's mentor and the tribe's most respected warrior. The firelight deepened the lines on Nantai's face, testament to 80 summers of hard-won wisdom. 3 days you have been absent, Elder Nahilzi began, his voice carrying the gravelly texture of age. 3 days when your eyes were needed to watch the movements of our enemies. Explain yourself, Shehe, son of Tarek. Shehe took a deep breath. He had rehearsed his words carefully during his journey, but now they seemed inadequate against the weight of tradition and tribal law. I was scouting the eastern boundary as instructed, he began. At dawn of the first day, I discovered something. Unexpected, a young white woman with child, suspended from a mesquite tree. Murmurs rippled through the circle. Keem, a young warrior known for his quick temper, spat into the dust. The white man's quarrels are not our concern, he said sharply. You know this, Shehe. I do know this, Shehe acknowledged. As I know that the sign placed beneath her was meant to blame our people for her death, this revelation brought silence. Elder Nahilzi leaned forward slightly, his interest piqued. What sign was this? Words carved in wood. Apache man don't forgive. Shehe met the elder's gaze steadily. But it was not Apache work. The tracks around the tree belonged to white men wearing cavalry boots, but walking with the uneven step of those who are not soldiers. Nantai's eyes narrowed. Mercenaries, or those who wish to appear as military. Yes, Shehe agreed. Men who would benefit from war between our peoples. The implications settled heavily over the council. For months, tensions had been building along the boundaries where Apache territory met settled lands. Incidents of violence had increased livestock. Stolen, isolated homesteads burned, hunting parties ambushed. Each side blamed the other, and with each accusation, the prospect of open conflict grew closer. "So you found this woman?" Elder Nahilzi prompted. "What then?" The moment of truth had arrived. Sheehy squared his shoulders. "I cut her down. I took her to a place of safety. I gave her medicine for her wounds." Outrage erupted from several council members. Keem leapt to his feet. "You helped a white woman? While they hunt our children like animals?" "Silence!" Nantai's command cut through the chaos. When quiet returned, he fixed Sheehy with a penetrating stare. "You have always been a follower of tribal law. Why break it now for one of them?" Sheehy chose his words with care. She carried a child, innocent of any wrong, and she herself was a victim of those who wished to provoke war with the Apache. "How do you know this?" Elder Nahilzi asked. "She told me of her captors. Men who killed her husband for helping Apache families. Men who tortured her for gold that does not exist. Men who planned to leave her body to be found by our scouts to kindle hatred." A thoughtful silence followed his words. Sheehy pressed. "His advantage. Has not Grandmother Nijoni taught that all life is sacred? That to turn away from suffering is to diminish our own spirits? I could not leave this woman and her unborn child to die, knowing they were placed there as bait in a trap set for our people." Elder Nahilzi exchanged glances with Nantai. "Where is this woman now?" "In a safe place?" Sheehy replied, deliberately vague. He would not reveal the location of his hidden canyon, not even to the council. "And what do you intend to do with her?" Nantai asked. It was the question Sheehy had been dreading, partly because he had no clear answer himself. "When she is strong enough, I will help her reach a settlement where she will be safe from those who hurt her." Keen snorted derisively. "And then she will bring soldiers to hunt us." "No," Sheehy said with conviction. "She is not such a person." "You trust the word of a white woman?" Keen challenged. "I trust what I have seen with my own eyes," Sheehy countered. "She has lost her husband to violence. She carries his child. She seeks no vengeance, only safety." Elder Nahilzi raised a hand, silencing further debate. For a long moment, he stared into the council fire, as if reading the future in its flickering flames. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured. 3 nights passed, I dreamed of a white dove nesting in an eagle's eyrie. In the dream, the dove laid an egg from which hatched neither dove nor eagle, but a creature with the wings of both. The old man's eyes found she's. Dreams speak in riddles, but they speak truth nonetheless. Nantai nodded slowly. There have been other signs. 3 days ago, a hunting party found the bodies of settlers, a man, a woman, and a child killed in the manner of our warriors, yet no Apache had hunted in that territory. False flag, Sheehy said grimly. The same men who took my woman. Your woman? Keem pounced on the slip. Sheehy felt heat rise in his face. The woman I found, he corrected. Elder Nalze's lips twitched in what might have been a suppressed smile. What would you have of us, Sheehy? Permission to harbor an outsider? Blessing for breaking tribal law? I ask only for time, Sheehy replied. Time to heal her wounds, to help her reach safety, and perhaps to learn more of these men who would set our peoples against each other. The council members exchanged glances, unspoken communications passing between them. Finally, Nantai spoke. 3 days you have been gone. 3 more you may have. Return to this woman, see to her needs. But on the 4th day, you will bring her here, so the council may judge for themselves. It was not what Sheehy had hoped for, but it was better than he had feared. He bowed his head in acceptance. It shall be as you say. As the council dispersed, Nantai approached Sheehy privately. The old warrior's eyes held a mixture of concern and something that might have been pride. You walk a dangerous path, my son, he said quietly. I walk the path the spirits have shown me, Shihi replied. Nantai smiled faintly. Perhaps so. But remember, even spirits can lead us astray if we do not listen with clear hearts. He placed a gnarled hand on Shihi's shoulder. Be careful. There are those in the tribe who will not understand what you have done. And you, my teacher, do you understand? The old man's gaze grew distant. I have lived long enough to know that the simplest truths are often the hardest to grasp. Sometimes, to honor who we truly are, we must set aside who we think we should be. His eyes refocused on Shihi. Go now, return to your woman. But watch, the trail behind you. Keem has friends who share his anger. Shihi returned to the hidden canyon under the cover of darkness, his pack now filled with supplies from the tribe's stores, dried meat, medicinal herbs, clean bandages woven from soft plant fibers. Nantai had slipped him an extra waterskin and a small pouch of rare healing clay. With a meaningful look, but no words as he approached the narrow entrance, Shihi paused, listening intently. Something had changed. He could hear the soft sound of singing. He slipped through the passage silently, hand on his knife. The sight that greeted him in the canyon's heart made him stop in his tracks. Emma sat beside the sacred spring, the moonlight silvering her hair. She was carefully arranging stones in a circular pattern while singing a gentle melody Shihi didn't recognize. The canyon walls caught her voice, amplifying it into something otherworldly. She looked up as his boot dislodged a small stone. For a heartbeat, fear flashed across her face before recognition dawned. Shihi, she said, relief evident in her voice. You came back. As I said I would, he replied, setting down his pack. His eyes moved to the stone arrangement. What are you making? Emma glanced down at her work. It's a herb garden. I've been transplanting some of the medicinal plants you showed me, organizing them by their properties. She gestured to different sections of the circle. A's for fever, B's for pain, V's for wounds. Shihi studied the careful arrangement, impressed by her initiative. You have been busy. It helped pass the time, she admitted. And her hand went unconsciously to her belly. It gave me something to think about besides worry. Shihi nodded in understanding. The baby is well? Active. A small smile touched her lips. Especially at night. I've been talking to him, singing old songs my mother taught me. That is good. The child should know its mother's voice. Shihi began unpacking the supplies he had brought. I have more medicine, food, things that will help. Emma watched him, a question in her eyes that she seemed hesitant to ask. Finally, she said, Your people, are they angry with you? Shihi considered how much to share. Some understand, others question. I have 3 days before I must bring you to them. Bring me to them? Alarm sharpened her voice. The council wishes to see you for themselves, to judge if what I have told them is true. Emma paled slightly. In the moonlight, and if they don't believe you? If they don't believe me? Shihi met her gaze steadily. Then we will find another way. The simple declaration hung in the air between them, weighted with unspoken meaning. Shihi realized with some surprise that he meant it. If the council rejected Emma, he would not abandon her to her fate. To cover the moment, he reached into his pack and withdrew a small bundle wrapped in buckskin. I began this before I left. There was time to work on it while waiting for the council. He unwrapped the bundle to reveal a half-completed wooden cradle, small enough to be carried easily yet sturdy in its construction. The wood had been carefully shaped and smoothed, with the beginnings of carved designs along the sides, traditional Apache protection symbols interwoven with patterns of leaves and flowers. Emma's breath caught. She reached out tentatively, her fingers tracing the carvings. It's beautiful, Shihi. Every child needs a safe place to rest, he said simply. He took out his small carving knife and a piece of sandstone for smoothing. I will work on it more tonight. They sat in companionable silence for a time, Emma sorting her transplanted herbs, while Shi's hands moved steadily over the wood, shaping and refining. The night was peaceful, filled with the gentle sounds of the spring and the occasional call of a night bird. Where did you learn to carve like that? Emma asked eventually. My father taught me when I was a boy. Shi's hands continued their rhythmic work. He said a man should know how to create, not just how to hunt or fight. He sounds wise. He was. Shi paused, memory surfacing. He died when I was 12 summers. Blue-coat soldiers came to our village while the men were hunting. They said they were looking for stolen horses. When my father returned and tried to explain that we had taken nothing, they shot him. Emma's expression softened with genuine sympathy. I'm so sorry, Shi. He shrugged slightly. It was many years ago. Does the pain ever truly go away? She asked quietly, and Shi knew she was thinking of her own loss, still fresh as an open wound. No, he said honestly, but it changes. Becomes something you carry rather than something that carries you. Emma considered this. My mother used to sing a lullaby, she said after a moment, when I was afraid or sad. Would you like to hear it? Shi nodded, setting aside his carving. Emma's voice rose softly in the night air, a simple melody carrying words of comfort and protection. Shi listened, watching how her face transformed as she sang the worry lines smoothing, a gentle glow replacing the shadow of fear that had lurked behind her eyes since he found her dot. When the song ended, the canyon seemed to hold the last notes, reluctant to let them fade. That is a good song for a child, Shi said. In my tribe, we also sing to the little ones. After a brief hesitation, he began a traditional Apache lullaby, his deep voice rumbling softly through the melody. It was a song of the protective spirits, of the watchful ancestors, of the land that cradled all its children. Though Emma couldn't understand the words, she smiled at the universal language of comfort the song conveyed. When Shi finished, Emma surprised him by asking, Will you teach me the words? I'd like my baby to know songs from both worlds. Something warm and unexpected bloomed in Shi's chest. It would be an honor. Patiently, he broke the song into small phrases, guiding Emma through the unfamiliar sounds of his language. She stumbled occasionally, laughing at her mistakes, but persevered until she could follow the basic melody and words. As they practiced together, their voices sometimes blending, sometimes taking turns, Shi was struck by the strangeness of the moment. An Apache warrior and a white settler woman, sharing songs beneath the stars in a hidden canyon, while outside their sanctuary, tensions between their peoples edged ever closer to war. Yet here, in this place apart from the wider world, something new was taking root, fragile as a seedling, but stubbornly pushing toward the light. Dawn found Shi at the upper rim of the canyon, scanning the surrounding terrain with the practiced eye of a scout. The desert stretched before him, painted in the soft pinks and golds of early morning light. To the untrained observer, it would appear empty, lifeless. But Shi saw the signs of passage, a disturbed patch of gravel on a distant ridge, the faint track of boot prints crossing a dry wash, a broken branch on a mesquite too high to have been reached by desert animals. Men had passed nearby, recently, descended quickly to where Emma slept peacefully beside the dying embers of their fire. Her face in repose looked younger, the worry lines smoothed away by sleep. The child within her shifted visibly, a small foot or elbow pressing against the taut skin of her belly. She hated to disturb her rest, but urgency drove him. Emma, he said softly, touching her shoulder. Wake up. She came to consciousness quickly, another survival trait that spoke of her resilience. What is it? Someone approaches. Not my people. Fear flashed in her eyes, but she controlled it admirably, pushing herself up to sitting. Ransom? Perhaps. He moved to the fire, scattering the ashes and covering all traces. 3 men, moving cautiously. They follow a trail, but not directly to this place. How close? Still distant, but moving this way. He gathered essential supplies into a small pack: water, dried meat, medicines. There is a hiding place higher in the canyon, difficult to reach, but safer. Emma nodded, already pulling on her worn boots. As she stood, she winced slightly, one hand going to the small of her back. The baby? Just the usual aches, she assured him. I'm ready. They moved deeper into the canyon, following the course of the spring as it wound between towering rock walls. The path grew steeper, requiring careful navigation over loose stones and around massive boulders. He stayed close to Emma, offering his arm for support when needed. Wait here, he said when they reached a sheltered alcove. I must check something. Leaving Emma in the relative safety of the alcove, he backtracked down the canyon, moving swiftly and silently. Near the entrance, he paused, listening intently. Distant voices carried on the morning airmen speaking English, their tones hushed but urgent. ... Tracks, lead this way, ... double quotes, waste of time, ... Boss says find her, ... He melted into the shadows as the voices grew closer. Then his foot struck something that shouldn't have been there, a slender shaft of wood with stone fletchings. He bent and picked it up, a broken arrow, but not one of his . The design was familiar, the fletchings arranged in the pattern used by Nantai's family group. The shaft had been deliberately snapped, the universal Apache signal for danger approaching. Someone from his tribe had been here, someone who had seen the hunters coming and left this warning. He returned to Emma, the broken arrow in hand. What is it? She asked, reading the concern in his expression. He showed her the arrow. A warning from my people. They know men. Search for you. Your people know about this canyon? There was a hint of betrayal in her voice. Not all, but Nantai, my teacher. Quotes he hesitated. I believe he has suspected. He knows me well. He tucked the broken arrow into his belt. We cannot stay in the open. The men come closer. Higher up the canyon wall, nearly invisible unless... One knew exactly where to look. Was a narrow fissure in the rock, barely wide enough for a person to slip through sideways. He led Emma to this hidden entrance. It will be a tight fit, he warned, eyeing her swollen belly with concern. I can manage. Emma's determination was clear. She turned sideways and began to ease herself into the narrow passage. The fissure opened into a small cave, dry and surprisingly comfortable, with a natural chimney that allowed fresh air to circulate without revealing smoke from a small fire. He had discovered it as a boy and stocked it with emergency supplies, water in sealed clay jars, dried food, blankets. Once inside, Emma settled onto a natural stone shelf that formed a crude bench. Will they find the canyon entrance? Perhaps, but this place they will not find. He arranged the supplies, then sat cross-legged near the entrance, his rifle across his knees. Now we wait. The hours passed slowly. Emma dozed intermittently while he remained vigilant. Near midday, they heard voices echoing through the canyon below, men calling to each other as they searched. Empty. Check those rocks. Nothing. Here but some old ashes. Emma's eyes met Shihi's in the dim light of the cave. She whispered, barely audible, They found our campsite. He nodded, one finger to his lips, signaling silence. The voices continued, growing fainter as the searchers moved deeper into the canyon, then louder as they returned toward the entrance. Fragments of conversation drifted up to their hiding place. Waste of time. Ransom ain't gonna be happy. Double quotes. Check the ridge to the north. Finally, the voices faded completely. Still, he waited, counting his heartbeats, until he was certain the men had truly departed. Only then did he move from his position. They have gone? Emma asked. For now. He helped her to her feet, but they will return. Men like these do not give up easily. They descended carefully to the canyon floor. The searchers had left their mark, the remains of their camp disturbed, Emma's carefully arranged herb garden scattered. He examined the footprints, confirming what he already suspected. 3 men, he said. One is very large, with feet like a bear. One walks with his right foot turned outward. The third. He knelt, studying a particular print more closely. The third has a star on his boot heel. A martial star. A lawman? Emma looked confused. Working with ransom? Or pretending to be law? He straightened. What do you know of this ransom? You said he leads men who call themselves militia. Emma's expression darkened. Joseph Ransom. He came to our territory about a year ago. Claims to have fought for the South in the war, though Thomas said his stories didn't add up. She absently stroked her belly as she continued. He gathered men around him, drifters, deserters, criminals. They call themselves the Arizona Rangers, but they're just thugs with guns. And they want this land? For what purpose? There are rumors of silver in the mountains, Emma said, and the valley to the east has the best water for 50 miles. Ransom wants it all for mining, for ranching, for whatever will make him rich. And the Apache stand in his way, he concluded. Yes, and people like Thomas who believed your people have the right to live in peace. Her voice caught. The day they killed him, Ransom said the only good Apache was a dead one, and the only white worth keeping alive was one who understood that. He was silent for a moment, absorbing this information. These men who search today, they will tell Ransom they found signs of a camp. He'll know I'm alive. Fear crept into Emma's voice. That I might tell others what he did. Yes. He met her gaze directly, which means we cannot simply hide and wait. Soon I must take you to my people, as the council has ordered. But now I fear that journey may bring danger to my tribe. Then what can we do? He looked at the broken arrow in his belt, the warning from Nantai. We prepare. We plan. And when the time comes, we face what must be faced. Emma's sharp intake of breath cut through the pre-dawn stillness. He, who had been keeping watch at the canyon entrance, turned to find her sitting upright, both hands pressed against her belly. The baby? He asked, crossing to her side. She nodded, her face tense. Strong movement, and got something else. A tightening. Her eyes met his, worry evident. It's too soon, Shahi. The baby shouldn't come for another moon cycle. He helped her to a more comfortable position, his mind racing through his limited knowledge of childbirth. He had assisted the tribal midwife only once with his sister Nijoni's difficult delivery, and once when a young woman had gone into labor during a seasonal migration. Neither experience had prepared him for this. Perhaps it is just the child turning, he suggested, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Preparing for the journey. Emma managed a small smile at his choice of words. Maybe, but we should prepare, just in case. She was right. If the child was indeed coming early, they needed to be ready. The canyon provided shelter and water, but a premature birth would present challenges beyond what Shuhi had anticipated. I will gather what we need, he said, rising to his feet. From his stores, he retrieved a special blanket. He had been saving a small but finely woven piece made by the tribal weaver as a gift for his scouting services. The blanket was dyed in traditional patterns of protection and blessing. The edges worked with symbols for health and long life. It was meant to be traded for supplies when winter came, but now it would serve a higher purpose, Emma watched as he spread the blanket near the fire. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It is a birth blanket," he explained. The patterns called to the protective spirits, asking them to watch over new life. He busied himself preparing other necessities, clean water from the spring, strips of soft buckskin for binding, the special clay Nantai had given him, known for its power to stop bleeding. He laid out his sharpest knife, sterilizing it in the flames of the fire. As he worked, memories of his sister's childbirth surfaced unbidden. Najoni had struggled for 2 days, her strength ebbing with each hour. The midwife had grown increasingly concerned, performing ceremony after ceremony to ease the child's passage. In the end, the baby boy had been born silent and still, his spirit already departed for the Star Road. He pushed the memory away. This would be different. Another gasp from Emma brought him back to the present. She was breathing rapidly, her knuckles white where she gripped the edge of her blanket. "That was stronger," she said when the moment passed. "And closer to the last one." He knelt beside her, placing a calming hand on her shoulder. "Tell me what you need. What your people do when a child comes." Emma took a deep breath, gathering herself. "My mother was a midwife. She taught me some things." She grimaced slightly. "Though experiencing it is not quite different from assisting. Your mother's wisdom lives in you," he reminded her, "as my grandfather's lives in me. Together, we will find the way." As the sun climbed higher, Emma's pains continued, growing stronger, but still irregularly spaced. Between contractions, he encouraged her to walk slowly around the canyon, supporting her when needed. The movement seemed to ease her discomfort somewhat. "In my tribe," he told her, "women often walk during early labor. The old ones say it helps the baby find the path." "My mother believed the same," Emma said, surprised at the similarity. "She always encouraged movement until the final stage." They shared other birthing traditions as they waited, how Apache women knelt on blankets padded with soft pine needles, how settler women often used special birthing chairs passed down through generations, how both cultures valued certain herbs to ease pain and prevent bleeding. "It seems we are not so different in the ways that matter," Emma observed during a rest period. He nodded thoughtfully. "Life comes the same way to all peoples, and leaves the same way." As evening approached, Emma's contractions remained, inconsistent, eventually tapering off to her mingled relief and concern. "False labor," she explained, resting against a boulder. "My mother said it happens often, especially with first babies. The body practices for the real work to come." He brought her water from the spring. "Then we still have time to prepare." "Yes, but perhaps not much." Emma's hand moved in a protective circle over her belly. "The baby feels different, lower. My mother would say he's engaged, ready to begin the journey." He sat beside her as the first stars appeared above the canyon walls. "You speak of the child as he. Do you know it is a son?" Emma smiled. "No, just a feeling." Though Thomas was convinced we would have a daughter, her expression softened at the memory. "He said she would have my spirit and his stubbornness. A dangerous combination," he observed with gentle humor. That earned a genuine laugh from Emma, the first he had heard from her. The sound echoed pleasantly off the canyon walls. "What of Apache names?" she asked after a comfortable silence. "How do your people choose them?" "Some come from family, passed through generations," he explained. "Others are given based on circumstances of birth, the season, a significant event, a vision that comes to the parents. Later, a person might earn a new name through their deeds or character." "Like Silent Sentinel," Emma said, pronouncing his name with careful respect. "Yes, I was given that name when I became a scout. Before, I was called Si-Had-Zisi Rock, that stands alone." "Both names suit you," Emma observed. Then, hesitantly, "If, when the baby comes, would you help me name the child?" I would like him or her to carry something of both worlds. The request took Shi-He by surprise. Among his people, naming was a sacred responsibility, usually reserved for family or tribal elders. That Emma would ask this of him indicated a level of trust he had not expected. It would be an honor, he said simply. As the night deepened around them, they spoke of names and their meanings, of hopes for the child's future, of the world they wished it could be born into a world where the divisions between their peoples did not end in bloodshed. Thomas believed it was possible, Emma said softly. A future where Apache and settler could live as neighbors, perhaps even friends. Your husband was either a great visionary or a great fool, Shi-He replied, but his tone held no mockery. Perhaps both. The greatest wisdom often appears as folly to those without eyes to see it. Emma's hand found his in the darkness, a brief touch of gratitude. Thank you, Shi, not just for saving us, but for seeing us, me and my child, as people worth saving. Shi-He gazed up at the stars, thinking of the broken arrow, of Ransom's men searching, of the tribal council awaiting his return with Emma, so many forces converging, so many paths crossing. Perhaps, he said quietly, we are all being saved in different ways. The real labor began as the first gray light of dawn seeped into the canyon. Emma's cry startled Shi-He from his light sleep, a sound different from anything he had heard from her before, primal and urgent. The baby, she gasped when he reached her side. It's coming now. Her face was already sheened with sweat, her knuckles white as she gripped the edges of the birth blanket. Shi-He helped her into the kneeling position she had said would be best, supporting her weight as another contraction seized her. Breathe, he reminded her, his voice steady despite a flutter of uncertainty in his chest, like the wind through canyon walls, in and out. Emma nodded, focusing on her breathing as the contraction peaked and then subsided. They're coming fast, she managed between pants. Not like yesterday. This is real. Shi-He worked efficiently, arranging everything within reach: clean water, the sterilized knife, soft cloths, healing herbs, the special umbilical cord pouch he had prepared from the softest deerskin. He built up the fire, knowing they would need warmth for the newborn as the sun crested the canyon rim. Emma's labor intensified. Each contraction came harder than the last, the time between them shrinking until they seemed almost continuous. Shi-He supported her tirelessly, murmuring encouragement, wiping her brow, helping her change positions when her strength began to flag. I can't, she whispered after a particularly brutal contraction. I can't do this, Shi. You can, he assured her. You are doing it. You are the strongest woman I have known. Tell me a story, she pleaded as another contraction built. Distract me. Shi-He spoke then of the first woman in Apache legend, of how she had given birth to the people with the help of changing woman, who blessed each child with gifts for survival. He described the traditional blessing ceremony, the sacred pollen, the songs that welcomed new life into the tribe. His words seemed to give Emma strength. She focused on his voice, using it as an anchor through the sea of pain. When he sensed her flagging again, he began a birthing song, a rhythmic chant that had been used by Apache women for generations to help time their pushing. Midday came and went. Emma's labor progressed, but slowly. Shi-He began to worry about her strength, about the strain on the premature child. He prepared a tea of herbs known to ease difficult births, helping Emma drink it between contractions. Something's wrong, she said after another hour had passed. The baby should have come by now. Shi-He hesitated, then made a decision. I must check the child's position, he said, his voice professional despite his discomfort. My sister's labor was difficult because her son was turned wrong. Emma nodded, too exhausted to feel embarrassment. Do what you need to do. With gentle, careful hands, Shi-He felt the shape of the child through Emma's belly. There the firm roundness. That must be the head, but it was on the side, not low where it should be. The child is sideways, he told her. It cannot find the path. Fear flickered in Emma's eyes, quickly followed by determination. My mother taught me about this. I need to change position, get on my hands and knees. Shahi helped her move, supporting her weight as she adjusted to the awkward posture. Now press here, she instructed, guiding his hands to a specific spot on her abdomen. Firm but gentle pressure. He followed her instructions exactly, applying steady pressure while Emma rocked back and forth, working with the next contraction, rather than against it. The maneuver seemed to help after the contraction passed. He could feel that the baby had shifted. Again, Emma gasped. When the next one comes? They repeated the process through 3 more contractions. After the third, Emma let out a different kind of cry, half pain, half triumph. It worked. I can feel the change. The baby's moving down. The next hour brought steady progress. Emma's body seemed to gather new strength, working with renewed purpose now that the obstacle had been overcome. He continued to support her, his admiration growing with each moment of courage she displayed. Just as the sun's light began to redden with approaching sunset, Emma gave a final, powerful push. He was ready, his hands steady as he guided the infant into the world. A girl, he announced, his voice thick with emotion as the tiny being squirmed in his palms. You have a daughter, Emma. For one terrifying moment, the newborn was silent. Then she drew her first breath and let out a cry that echoed off the canyon wall, small but fierce. A declaration of life and determination that brought tears to Shihi's eyes. He cleaned the child quickly but thoroughly, wrapped her in the soft portion of the birth blanket, and placed her in Emma's waiting arms. The new mother's exhausted, face transformed with a love so pure and powerful that Shihi had to look away, feeling as though he witnessed something too sacred for outside eyes. Hello, little one, Emma whispered, counting tiny fingers, marveling at the perfection of miniature features. You've had quite a journey already, haven't you? While Emma bonded with her daughter, Shihi prepared the umbilical cord pouch carefully, preserving the connection between mother and child as tradition demanded. Among his people, the cord was kept safe until it could be buried in a place of significance, a practice meant to tie the child to the land that would sustain her. In my tribe, he explained as he worked, we believe that where the cord returns to the earth, the child's spirit will always find strength. Emma watched him with interest. My grandmother practiced something similar. She buried all her children's cords beneath a special oak tree on their farm. When his task was complete, Shihi prepared a nourishing broth for Emma and helped her into a more comfortable position. The new mother was exhausted but radiant, her focus entirely on the small bundle in her arms. As twilight deepened in the canyon, Shihi performed a simple blessing ceremony, sprinkling a pinch of sacred pollen in the 4 directions before touching it gently to the baby's forehead. What are the words? Emma asked, watching the ritual with respect. May you walk in beauty. Shihi translated. May the dawn and the sunset know your name. May you follow the pollen path all the days of your life. Emma smiled, then looked down at her daughter thoughtfully. Sarah, she said after a moment. Her first name will be Sarah, after my mother. She hesitated, then added, but I would like her to have an Apache name as well. Would that be appropriate? Shihi considered the request carefully. Among my people, names have power. They are not given lightly. I understand if it's not possible. I did not say that. Shihi studied the newborn's face, noting the strength already evident in her tiny features. Nantai, he said finally. It means one who speaks with wisdom. It is also the name of my teacher, a great and honorable man. Sarah Nantai. Emma tried the combination, her voice soft with emotion. A name from each of her worlds. Shihi nodded approval. A bridge builder's name. As night fell completely, Emma finally succumbed to exhaustion, sleeping with her daughter, cradled securely against her chest. He maintained his vigil by the fire, his rifle close at hand. The birth had gone well, against considerable odds, but he knew their challenges were far from over. Tomorrow was the third day, the deadline set by the tribal council for bringing Emma to them. And somewhere beyond the canyon, Ransom and his men continued their search. The newborn's cry, though tiny, had been strong enough to echo. If anyone had been nearby, a distant sound interrupted his thoughts, the crack of a twig breaking under a heavy boot. She rose silently, rifle in hand, and moved toward the canyon entrance. Their brief peace was ending. She moved like a shadow through the pre-dawn darkness, slipping past the narrow canyon entrance to scout the surrounding terrain. The sound he had heard during the night had troubled his sleep, though no further disturbances had followed. The desert was coming alive with morning, a coyote trotting along a distant ridge, quail stirring in the brush, the first tentative notes of songbirds, greeting the lightening sky. But beneath these familiar rhythms, he sensed something amiss. Years of tracking had honed his awareness to the point where he could feel disruption in the land's patterns before consciously identifying its source. There, at the edge of a dry wash about half a mile from the canyon, fresh tracks, not yet, distorted by the night wind. 3 men, moving with purpose, no longer bothering to conceal their trail. He followed the tracks to where they met a larger set of hoofprints. A small camp had been established in the shelter of a sandstone, outcropping ashes from a carefully banked fire, scraps of food, cigarette stubs. 5 bedrolls had been laid out, though only 3 showed signs of recent use. The others must still be searching elsewhere, he reasoned, which meant they had narrowed their focus, but hadn't yet located the canyon. A scrap of paper caught his attention, half buried at the edge of the campsite. He retrieved it, finding a reward notice with a crude sketch of Emma's face. The text declared her a dangerous fugitive, wanted for the murder of her husband and theft of valuable mining claims. $500 for her capture dead or alive. Below that, in smaller print, warning, may be in company of hostile Apache. Exercise extreme caution. Shi's jaw tightened. Ransom was clever creating a false narrative that would motivate bounty hunters while simultaneously turning public sentiment against both Emma and any Apache who might help her. He was about to leave when something else caught his eye, a folder half concealed beneath a rock, as if hastily hidden. Inside was an official-looking document with a territorial seal, a wanted poster for Joseph Ransom himself, describing him as armed and dangerous, and wanted for multiple counts of murder, extortion, and claim-jumping. So Ransom was no militia leader, but a criminal hiding behind false authority. The irony might have amused Shihi under different circumstances. Now, it only confirmed the danger they faced. He returned to the canyon by a circuitous route, ensuring he wasn't followed. Emma was awake, nursing little Serenantai while humming softly. The sight gave Shihi a moment's pause, this small pocket of peace amid growing threat. "You look troubled," Emma said, reading his expression with uncanny accuracy. "Men search nearby," he confirmed, showing her the reward notice. "Ransom spreads lies about you." Emma scanned the paper, her face paling. "Thomas's mining claims? We never had any. Our land was for farming, not mining." Her eyes met Shi's. "They're making me a murderer to justify killing me." "Yes, but I found this as well." He handed her the wanted poster for Ransom. "Your enemy is also an enemy of the law." Emma studied the poster, a grim satisfaction flashing briefly across her face. "So the authorities are after him too." Thomas always said his past would catch up with him eventually. She glanced down at her daughter, now sleeping peacefully against her breast. "But that doesn't help us now. No, he agreed. We must move soon. Today is the third day. I am expected to bring you to my tribe. Concern shadowed Emma's features. Can I travel so soon after giving birth? And the baby? It is dangerous, he acknowledged. But staying may be more dangerous. If Ransom's men find this place, we would be trapped. Emma considered this, absently stroking her daughter's wispy hair. How far is your tribe's camp? Half a day's journey for a strong walker. Longer in your condition. And if we wait another day for me to recover? He weighed the options. The council expects us today. To delay risks their mistrust. But to travel too soon risks your health and the child's. Emma straightened her shoulders, decision crystallizing in her eyes. I've survived worse than a difficult walk, and I won't risk bringing danger to your people by making them send a search party. Her courage impressed him, though he remained concerned. We will move slowly, rest often, he promised. And I know places to hide if trouble comes. They prepared as quickly as possible. He fashioned a carrying sling for baby Sarah from the softest portion of the birth blanket, allowing Emma to keep her close while leaving her hands free. He packed only essentials: water, food, medicines, his weapons. The rest would have to be left behind. As Emma made her final preparations, he slipped away to the sacred spring. He knelt beside the clear water, dipping his fingers into its coolness, and offered a silent prayer to the spirits of the canyon who had sheltered them through these difficult days. When he returned, he found Emma standing ready, Sarah secured against her chest, a determined set to her jaw, despite the exhaustion still evident in her posture. There is a matter we have not discussed, he said, approaching her. The tribal council will have many questions. Some may not be welcoming. I understand, Emma replied. I'm an outsider, a white woman. Yes, and there are those among my people who have suffered greatly at white hands. He met her gaze directly. They will ask why you should be helped when so many Apache have been shown no mercy by settlers. Emma considered this, her expression thoughtful. What would you have me tell them? The truth, he said simply. As you have told me, your husband's kindness to Apache families. Ransom's determination to provoke war between our peoples for his own gain. Your child, born of two worlds. He paused. But most importantly, speak from your heart. My people can sense falsehood. As can mine, Emma said with a hint of sadness. Though we often choose to ignore it. They left the canyon as the sun cleared. The eastern horizon, its warmth not yet turned to the scorching heat of midday. He led them by a route that offered maximum cover through dry washes, along rocky ground that would hold few tracks, beneath overhanging ledges that would hide them from distant observers. Emma moved more slowly than he had hoped, but with a steady determination that prevented him from suggesting they turn back. Little Sarah remained remarkably quiet, as if somehow understanding the need for silence. They had covered perhaps 2 miles when he froze, raising one hand in warning. Emma immediately stilled, pressing herself against a boulder for cover. Voices carried on the morning airmen speaking English, moving parallel to their route about a 1/4 mile to the east. Thought I heard something. Waste of time. Double quotes. Boss says find her or don't come back. He and Emma exchanged glances. The hunters were drawing closer to their position. To continue would risk discovery. To return to the canyon might lead Ransom's men straight to their sanctuary. The only option was to hide and wait for the search party to pass. He guided Emma to a small depression beneath a juniper, its low-hanging branches providing natural concealment. They crouched together, hardly daring to breathe, as the voices grew louder. Baby Sarah chose that moment to stir, making a small sound of discomfort. Emma quickly put her to breast, muffling any cries, while he prepared himself for the possibility of confrontation. If they were discovered, he would buy Emma time to escape, even at the cost of his own life. The searchers passed within 50 yards of their hiding place, close enough that he could make out the features of the 3 men, one tall and gaunt with a cavalry officer's bearing, another heavyset with a distinctive limp, the third younger than the others, constantly scanning the terrain with nervous eyes. None matched the description Emma had given of Ransom himself, which meant the leader was elsewhere, perhaps coordinating other search parties. For nearly an hour after the men moved on, he and Emma remained hidden, the silence broken only by baby Sarah's occasional soft sounds. Finally, when he was certain the immediate danger had passed, he helped Emma to her feet. "We cannot continue to the tribal camp," he said quietly. "Not today. The risk is too great." Emma nodded, fatigue evident in every line of her body. The brief journey had already taxed her limited strength. "Where will we go?" He considered their options. Returning to the canyon seemed unwise. If the searchers were methodically covering the area, they might discover the entrance. They needed another sanctuary, somewhere even more hidden. "There is a place," he said after a moment. "A sacred place where I go to seek visions. Few know of it." The Vision Rock lay in a small box canyon about 3 miles east farther from the tribal camp, but in a direction the searchers had already covered and deemed empty. The journey would be difficult for Emma in her weakened state, but he saw no better alternative. They traveled slowly, using every available cover. Twice more they hid as search parties passed in the distance. The sun climbed higher, its heat intensifying, and he watched Emma with growing concern. Her face was pale beneath its sunburn, her steps becoming increasingly unsteady. "Just a little farther," he encouraged when she stumbled for the 3rd time. "Around that ridge lies our destination." The box canyon was exactly as he remembered. It a hidden pocket in the landscape, its entrance nearly invisible unless approached from the correct angle. Inside, sheer rock walls rose on 3 sides, creating a natural fortress. A small seep provided limited water, enough for their immediate needs. At the canyon's heart stood the Vision Rock, a towering monolith of red sandstone, its surface carved by wind and water into shapes that seemed to shift and change with the light. "It's beautiful," Emma murmured, gazing up at the formation as he helped her into the scant shade of a stunted juniper. "This is a place between worlds," he explained, unpacking their meager supplies. "The old ones say the boundary between the spirit realm and our own is thinner here." He built a small, smokeless fire, using dry sage and juniper branches, then prepared a strengthening tea for Emma. While she rested, nursing Sarah, he gathered what little food the harsh landscape offered: prickly pear fruits, a handful of pine nuts, a desert hare that had the misfortune to cross his path. As evening approached, Emma's strength began to return. She watched with interest as Shihei prepared for his vision quest, fasting while he created a small circle of stones near the base of the monolith. "What will you ask the spirits?" she inquired, as he arranged sacred objects within the circle: an eagle feather, a small pouch of pollen, a carved stone bear his grandfather had given him. "Guidance," he replied simply. "The path ahead is clouded. We face enemies who would see us both dead. Your child's future hangs in the balance." He looked toward the Vision Rock, its surface now glowing copper in the setting sun. "My own wisdom is not enough for such challenges." Emma nodded, understanding. "My husband used to pray for guidance too, though in a different way. He said sometimes the answers come in unexpected forms." "That is true of visions as well," he agreed. "They rarely speak clearly. Often their meaning becomes apparent only after events unfold." As darkness fell, he entered the stone circle and began the ancient rituals of purification and preparation. Emma watched respectfully from a distance, keeping Sarah quiet and attending to her needs. The night deepened around them. Stars emerged in breathtaking profusion, their light casting faint shadows across the canyon floor. He remained motionless before the vision rock, his breathing slow and measured, his consciousness gradually shifting from the physical world to the realm of spirit. Time lost meaning. The boundaries of self dissolved. He became aware of presences gathering around him, not physical beings, but entities of light and purpose. Among them, he recognized his grandfather, not as the frail elder he had been at death, but in his prime, strong, tall, eyes bright with wisdom. "You walk a difficult path, grandson," the spirit said, its voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "I seek guidance," he replied, "for the woman and child under my protection, for my people who face danger from those who would take what remains of our lands." His grandfather's spirit gestured toward the vision rock, which had begun to glow with an inner light. Images formed on its surface, flowing like water, shifting like smoke. She saw Emma standing before a group of men, her child in her arms, speaking words he could not hear, but whose impact was visible in the changing expressions of her listeners. He saw Ransom, his face contorted with rage, a gun in his hand. He saw two peoples, Apache and settler, facing each other across a divide that seemed unbridgeable. Then, most surprisingly, he saw himself standing between them, holding not a weapon, but an open hand toward each side. "The woman carries more than a child," his grandfather's spirit told him. "She carries truth that must be heard. And you, grandson, carry more than your warrior strength. You carry the possibility of a different way." "What way?" He asked, struggling to understand. "Our peoples have been enemies for generations. Blood has answered blood in an unending cycle. Yet you saved her," the spirit reminded him. "You defied the expected path. That single choice has opened a door that was closed before." Other ancestors joined the conversation, then great-grandmothers, who had known the time before the white man came, uncles who had fought and died defending their lands, cousins lost to disease and starvation when forced from their traditional territories. Their voices blended into a chorus of wisdom, sometimes contradictory, sometimes harmonious. But through their many perspectives, a single thread emerged, the recognition that the old ways of conflict would lead only to the destruction of all that remained Apache life and land. "Then what is the answer?" He asked, frustration edging his voice. "To surrender? To become as they would make us?" "No," his grandfather's spirit said firmly. "But neither is it to fight as they fight, hate as they hate. Your path lies in between, in standing for truth, in protecting the innocent on both sides, in showing another way through your actions." The vision began to fade, the ancestral presences withdrawing like mist before the morning sun. As they departed, his grandfather left him with one final message. "Remember, grandson, the strongest warrior is not the one who defeats the most enemies, but the one who creates the most allies." He returned to consciousness as the first light of dawn touched the canyon rim. His body was stiff from hours of immobility, but his mind was clear, filled with a sense of purpose that transcended his previous doubts. He rose from the stone circle to find Emma awake, watching him. With quiet respect, baby Sarah slept peacefully in her makeshift cradle of blankets. "Did you find what you sought?" Emma asked softly. He nodded, his gaze distant as he processed the vision's meaning. "Not what I expected, but perhaps what I needed." "What happens?" Now, he said with newfound certainty. "We stop running and face what comes, not with weapons alone, but with truth." Morning broke clear and bright over the desert. He and Emma prepared to leave their temporary sanctuary, each sensing that events were accelerating toward some inevitable conclusion. The vision had left with a profound sense of purpose, though the exact path forward remained unclear. As Emma nursed Sarah one final time before their departure, She noticed her removing a piece of her petticoat, a strip of white fabric about 3 feet long. "What is that for?" he asked, curious. "A flag," Emma replied, tying the cloth to a straight juniper branch. "In my people's wars, a white flag means truce, a desire to speak rather than fight." She studied the makeshift banner with interest. "You believe Ransom's men will honor such a symbol?" "Not Ransom himself," Emma admitted, "but the others, the settlers he's deceived. Even some of his hired guns, they might hesitate to fire on a woman carrying a child and a white flag. It's worth trying." The simplicity of the idea struck Sheehy as powerful. His vision had shown him standing between opposing sides, empty-handed yet somehow bridging the divide. Perhaps this humble piece of cloth was part of that path. "It is good," he decided. "Truth needs no weapons, but it does need to be heard." They left the box canyon as the sun cleared the eastern ridges, making no attempt to hide their trail. If Ransom's men were still searching, let them come. Better to choose the ground for their confrontation than to be discovered at a disadvantage. Sheehy led them toward a distinctive mesa that marked the boundary between traditional Apache hunting grounds and the territories newly claimed by settlers. It was a place known to both peoples, neutral ground of sorts, where trading sometimes occurred in more peaceful times. They had traveled perhaps 2 hours when Sheehy spotted the dust of approaching riders, at least 5 men, moving with purpose directly toward them. Word of their location had spread, likely from one of the search parties spotting their trail. "They come," he told Emma, gesturing toward the dust cloud. "Are you certain of this path?" Emma's face was pale, but determined as she adjusted baby Sarah in her carrying sling and gripped the white flag. "I'm certain that running isn't the answer. My husband died because he believed truth could overcome hate. I owe it to his memory to stand for that same truth." Sheehy nodded, a newfound respect warming his gaze. "Then we will stand together." They continued walking steadily toward the mesa, making no attempt to flee or hide. When the riders drew close, enough to be identified, Sheehy's suspicions were confirmed. Ransom himself led the group, accompanied by the 3 men Sheehy had observed earlier and a 5th man wearing what appeared to be a marshal's badge. "Hold there," Ransom called when they were within hailing distance. He was a broad-shouldered man with a thick beard and cold eyes, his hand resting conspicuously on the revolver at his hip. Sheehy and Emma stopped, standing their ground as the riders approached. Emma raised the white flag higher, its pale fabric stark against the blue desert sky. The expressions on the riders' faces as they drew close enough to clearly see Emma told their own story: shock, confusion, and in some cases, uncomfortable guilt. Clearly, they hadn't expected to find her alive and well, much less standing voluntarily beside an Apache with a newborn child at her breast. "Well now," Ransom said, recovering quickly, "ain't this a touching sight? The grieving widow and her savage friend." His tone was mocking, but Sheehy detected an undercurrent of tension. This wasn't the scenario Ransom had planned for. "Mr. Ransom," Emma replied, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. "These men with you should know the truth of what you've done." Ransom's expression hardened. "The truth is, you're wanted for your husband's murder and theft of valuable mining claims. There's a reward for bringing you in dead or alive." He turned to the man wearing the marshal's badge. "Marshal Thompson, do your duty." The so-called marshal stepped his horse forward, but hesitated when his eyes fell on baby Sarah. "She's got a child, Ransom." "You didn't mention a baby." "Makes no difference," Ransom snapped. "The law's the law." "What law?" Emma challenged. "Thomas was murdered by your men while trying to protect an Apache family seeking medical help. There were no mining claims. That's a lie you invented to justify hunting me down after I escaped." Murmurs ran through the group of men. The youngest rider looked particularly disturbed, glancing between Emma and Ransom with growing uncertainty. Ransom's hand tightened on his gun. Don't listen to her. The Apache has obviously corrupted her mind. The Apache, he interrupted, speaking clear English that surprised Ransom's men, has a name. I am called he, and I found this woman hanging from a tree with a sign meant to blame my people. For her death, his steady gaze swept the group. A sign placed by men who wanted war between Apache and settler to hide their true purpose, stealing land that belongs to both. The youngest rider shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Boss, you said she killed her husband for the gold claim. But there's no gold in these parts. Everyone knows that. Shut your mouth, Jenkins, Ransom growled. But the damage was done. Seeds of doubt had been planted, as tension mounted among the riders. Baby Sarah chose that moment to wake, her tiny cry piercing the desert silence. The sound seemed to affect the men profoundly, a reminder of innocence amid their ugly business. Marshall removed his hat, revealing a balding head and troubled eyes. I need to see those wanted posters again, Ransom. And that territorial authorization you claim to have. We don't have time for paperwork, Ransom snarled. The woman's a murderer, and the Apache's a hostile. That's all you need to know. Actually, came a new voice from behind them. There is indeed a wanted poster that should concern us here. All heads turned to see a group of Apache warriors cresting a nearby ridge, led by Nantai. The old man sat his horse with the dignity of his many years, his weathered face impassive as he surveyed the scene. Elder Nahilzi asked, though the knowing gleam in his ancient eyes suggested he already anticipated the answer. Emma has the legal right to the land, she replied. She understands both languages and cultures. And I. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I would ensure the Apache interests are protected. Nantai smiled faintly. You speak of business, my student, but your eyes tell a different story. A ripple of knowing chuckles moved through the council. He felt warmth rise in his face, but did not deny his teacher's observation. Elder Nahilzi raised a hand, restoring solemnity to the proceedings. This woman has proven herself a friend to our people. Her child carries Apache blood through the naming ceremony we have honored. If she wishes to establish such a place, with you as her protector and partner, the council will not oppose it. The elder's gaze grew more pointed. But neither will we send our young ones there until we see that it is truly safe. Trust must be earned over time, not granted in a single season. That is fair, Shihi acknowledged as the meeting concluded. Nantai drew Shihi aside. You walk a new trail, my son, one that few have traveled before. Does that trouble you, my teacher? The old warrior's weathered face creased in a rare smile. The winds of change blow across our lands, whether we welcome them or not. Better to bend like the willow than break like the oak. He clasped Shihi's shoulder. Besides, I have seen how you look at her, and how she looks at you when your back is turned. Shihi returned to Emma's dwelling as evening painted the desert in gold and shadow. Sarah was awake, cooing softly as her mother sang a gentle lullaby, a blend of settler melody and Apache words that symbolized the bridge they were attempting to build. The council has agreed, he announced simply. Emma's face brightened with hope. Truly? With caution, he amended. But yes, they will not oppose a trading post on your land, with proper protections for Apache interests. Our land, Emma corrected gently. The simple phrase carried profound implications. Shihi met her gaze, seeing in her eyes the same question that filled his heart. Our land, he agreed softly, our future. As if understanding the significance of the moment, baby Sarah chose that instant to let out a delighted gurgle, her tiny hands reaching upward. Emma laughed, the sound as welcome to Shihi's ears as spring rain on desert soil. I believe she approves, Emma said. Shihi knelt beside them, allowing Sarah to grasp his finger with surprising strength. Strong like her mother, he observed. Determined like her father. And wise like her guardian, Emma added softly. The man who saved us both. Their eyes met over the child who connected them, a living bridge between worlds long divided. 1 year later, a small gathering assembled at the base of a familiar mesquite tree, the same tree where Sheehy had first discovered Emma hanging, between life and death. The harsh, twisted branches that had once supported such cruelty now cast dappled shade over a ceremony of hope. Sheehy stood tall beside Emma, who held little Sarah in her arms. The child, now a sturdy 1-year-old with curious eyes and a ready smile, reached out to touch the small mesquite sapling they had brought to plant. Careful, little one, Emma murmured fondly. That's our special tree. Around them stood representatives from two worlds, Nantai and Elder Nahilzi, with a small group of Apache, including the once skeptical Keem, Marshall Thompson, and several settlers from nearby homesteads, including Jenkins, the young man who had turned against ransom. The trading post established on Emma and Thomas's land had drawn them all together for various reasons: commerce, curiosity, cautious diplomacy, but this gathering was something more personal. A year ago, he began, his English now fluent from daily practice. Blood was shed here to feed hatred between our peoples. Today, we plant new life as a symbol of what can grow when we choose a different path. Emma stepped forward, her free hand finding Sheehy's. My husband believed that understanding could overcome fear, she said, her voice clear in the desert stillness. He died for that belief. But his dream lives on in our daughter, in this trading post where Apache and settler meet in peace, and in the new family we have created across the boundaries that once divided us. Sheehy and Emma had married in a ceremony that honored both their traditions, an Apache blessing followed by vows exchanged before a traveling preacher. The union had raised eyebrows on both sides, but as the trading post flourished and became a rare neutral ground where both peoples could meet without fear, acceptance had gradually followed. In Apache tradition, Nante explained to the settlers present, we plant trees to mark significant events, births, victories, new beginnings. The tree becomes a living witness to our story, growing stronger with each season. Elder Nahilzi stepped forward, his ancient face solemn as he sprinkled sacred pollen over the small hole dug for the sapling. May this tree grow straight and strong, he intoned in Apache, with Sheehy translating. May its roots reach deep into the earth that belongs to no man, but gives life to all. May its branches shelter those who seek peace in its shadow. Together, Sheehy and Emma placed the sapling in the prepared ground, with little Sarah helping in the enthusiastic, but not entirely effective way of toddlers. As they packed soil around its tender roots, Sheehy found himself reflecting on the improbable journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, he had been a scout moving between worlds, but belonging fully to neither. Emma had been a desperate woman, pregnant and abandoned to die. The boundaries between their peoples had seemed as insurmountable as the distant mountains. Now, they stood as family, their trading post becoming a small island of cooperation in a territory still fraught with tension. It wasn't paradise there. Had been threats from both sides, suspicious visitors, difficult moments when old prejudices surfaced. But something new was taking root, as surely as this sapling reaching for the sky. After the planting ceremony concluded, the group shared a meal that combined Apache and settler foods, a symbolic breaking of bread between communities that had rarely sat at the same table. Conversation flowed hesitantly at first, then with increasing ease as common ground was discovered in discussions of weather, crops, children, and the universal challenges of desert life. As the gathering dispersed. In the late afternoon, Marshall Thompson approached Sheehy and Emma privately. Thought you should know, he said, keeping his voice low. Ransom was hanged last month in Yuma. Before the end, he confessed to 3 more murders we didn't even know about. Emma closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the news. I can't say. I'm sorry, she admitted, but I take no joy in it either. Nor I, he agreed. Death answers death, but builds nothing new. The marshal nodded, understanding. Also, the territorial governor mentioned your trading post in his report to Washington. Called it a promising experiment in peaceful coexistence. You've caught some important attention. After the marshal departed, he and Emma lingered by the newly planted sapling. Sarah had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder, exhausted from the excitement of the day. Do you ever regret it? Emma asked softly. Choosing this path with us instead of returning to your life as a scout? He considered the question seriously, his gaze taking in the desert landscape that had been his home for all his life. The same mountains still stood guard on the horizon. The same sun still painted the sky in impossible colors at dawn and dusk. But within this familiar world, he had found something he never expected: a family, a purpose beyond survival, a chance to build rather than merely defend. The eagle does not regret leaving the nest, he said finally. Not when he discovers. He can soar. Emma smiled, the expression lighting her face in a way that still captivated him. Poetic as always. I learned from a good teacher, he replied, a hint of mischief in his eyes. Your husband's journal is full of such sayings. Thomas would have liked you, she said, not for the first time. He would have approved of what we're building here. He placed his hand gently on Sarah's back, feeling her steady breathing. She is what we build, he said simply. Everything else is just the foundation. As they turned to begin the journey, back to their trading post, he cast one final glance at the mesquite sapling, standing small but determined against the vast desert backdrop. From death had come life. From hatred had come love. From a moment of compassion beneath a tree of execution had grown a future neither of them could have imagined. The desert wind whispered through the branches of the mature mesquite, seeming to answer the silent promise of the sapling, that with time and care, even the most unlikely seeds could flourish in the harshest soil dot. And as they walked toward home, 3 figures casting a single shadow in the late afternoon light. The legend of the Apache man who forgave and the woman who bridged. 2 worlds began to spread, changing hearts for generations to come.